On today's episode, we'll talk about the Local 600 Trainee Program, Gordon Willis's Apple Box, True Romance, Midnight Run, and of course, why a fear of doorknobs can hurt your career. Just a little bit of business before we start. There may be a curse word here or there in this episode, so please listen responsibly. As always, our website, theop.io, is up and chock full of tips, tricks, and gooey operator goodness. Make sure to check out The Breakdown, where the best operators in the biz explain shots they have done, The Musings, where we discuss everything from quick tips to larger concepts of storytelling, the answers, the images, and so much more. I may or I may not take a break or two during this episode, but I promise that none of them will be longer than 22 seconds. Finally, if you are enjoying the podcast, please follow us, write a review, share us with your parents, and talk us up around the water cooler with your friends. So grab a beverage, sit back, and enjoy the op. Thanks for listening.
Lock it up, nice and quiet, and let's roll.
Rolling. Victor 30 Echo, take 2.
Hey, Margaret. Hey, Mark.
And camera set. And action.
Hello and welcome back to the Op Podcast, the podcast where we talk about operating and the art of visual storytelling. I am Dave Comides, your host, and we are here yet again from the Panavision Woodland Hills Theater that they so graciously allow us to use because it sounds better than the produce section at the local Ralph's supermarket. I'm very excited today to have an amazing operator, Dan Gold, who has done just a crazy amount of work and is known as an extremely talented operator throughout the business. Dan was the 2015 Lifetime Achievement Award winner from the SOC. Movies that he has worked on, by no means an entire list, but The Hangover, The Salton Sea, Perfect Storm, Wild Wild West, Air Force One, and personal favorite of mine, the TV show My So-Called Life, which I'm totally going to ask you about. And as the first AC before that, I just have to put in True Romance and Midnight Run because just two fantastic movies, but just a ton of other things. And for anyone listening, and I'll probably mention this again, Dan actually did a breakdown of a really interesting scene from Air Force One on the website, so you should check that out. But Dan, thanks for being here.
Oh, thanks for having me, Dave.
This is really cool. We unfortunately never got to work together before.
I know,
you
how
retired.
crazy is that?
How long you been retired?
Oh, let's see, probably 4 years now.
4 years?
Yeah.
Do you miss it?
Not at all.
All right, let's do a second take of that. No. Yeah, so it was time then. You were good to go?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I figured 40 years in the business was a good run, and, quit while I'm ahead.
And 40 years being able to make it out of the business.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. So tell me what's your story? How'd you get into the business?
Boy, let's see. As a kid, I was always interested in still photography, and did a lot of that in junior high school and high school. My dad and I built a darkroom in the basement of our house in New Jersey. We spent lots of time enlarging photographs in that darkroom. And my brother and I kind of messed around. I have a twin brother, Michael, so he and I messed around with Super 8 movies, when we were in junior high school. Made a bunch of those, charged a quarter for the neighborhood kids to come in and watch them.
That's great.
We did notable things like raised money for UNICEF. That was the big charity in those
Cool.
days.
Yeah.
But anyway, got to college, double majored in biology and film production, and taught school for a couple of years out of college, and then decided it was time to try the film business. So came out to LA from New Jersey, went to USC graduate school.
What year is this?
Gosh, this is like,
ballpark.
Graduated college 75, so USC's probably 78, 79.
Okay.
And, naively, when I first got here to California, I thought, I'll just go to USC and then I'll get into the film business.
Yeah, they just give you a job, right?
Exactly right. But not so. But I was lucky, and I've been lucky a few times in my career, and it's really helped. The USC Testing Bureau was a very popular place for companies that needed tests done, and at that time there was a program that the local 659, the camera local at that time,
Yep.
in conjunction with the Producers Association, sponsored, and it was a training program. It was originally a a way to get a more diversified bunch of people in the union, in the camera union. But anyway, they happened to give that test at the USC Testing Bureau, and
wait, what's the USC Testing Bureau?
it's just it's an institution on the USC campus where they administered standardized tests or customized tests.
So like one of these places, if you have to take the SAT, you can go there and they do it. Or, I got you. Okay.
Right.
So
but
they administered the 659 test.
Exactly.
There. Oh, I see.
And I was one of these naive film students running around in the quad at USC and happened to see a poster on the wall that said, USC Testing Bureau, Assistant Cameraman's Training Program test, next week, blah, 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 sign up here. We didn't know what it was, but a bunch of us ran over and signed up for the test and thinking, we'll just try all the options to get in. Maybe that'll pan out. Between college and graduate school, I had been a teacher for a couple of years, so I was really good at writing multiple choice questions and answering multiple choice questions. And this test to get into the training program was all multiple choice. It was mostly multiple choice.
Wow.
And it was a crazy battery of tests. I mean, a lot of it had nothing to do with cinematography or film production in any way. There were tests like, it was a battery of tests, like 8 hours long. And I still remember some of the ridiculous questions. There were like some, I guess, psychological profiles or something they were trying to get at. And there was a question that was something like multiple choice, yes, no, or maybe. I often think people are staring at me. Yes, no, or maybe.
Here's the big question: is what's the right answer to get you into the 659 training program?
Exactly. Or doorknobs frighten me. Yes, no, or maybe. Anyway.
So some of it was a little transparent, it sounds like, if you know what you're doing.
Exactly. And if you've been writing multiple choice questions for 2 years, you can rule out 2 of them right away, and then there's only 2 left.
Wow.
So anyway, 1,200 people took the test. They granted 100 interviews. And they let 10 people into the training program.
And actually, just was this a response to them suing the union to open it up? Was this sort of like that training program?
I don't know the specifics of the history.
It sounds like it might be a way to get people in who aren't just entrenched in the system already. But anyway.
Yep, I bet you're right.
So you were the small handful who made it.
Yeah, I was one of the lucky 10.
Everybody else was afraid of doorknobs, basically.
Apparently, yeah. So after I finished my time at USC, actually I didn't finish my time. I left a little early to start this training program. And it was a wonderful opportunity because in the training program they would take these groups of trainees and assign them to a TV show for 3 weeks or a feature for 3 weeks. And then at the end of that 3-week session, they'd rotate you to the next project.
Wow.
So in the course of a year, it was almost a year, you saw so many different ways of doing the job and got so much experience concentrated into those 3-week stints that it was just a great opportunity.
And were you sort of like a camera PA when you went in?
Technically we were called trainees.
Yeah.
And technically we weren't supposed to even touch the equipment.
That's what I was going to ask.
And God forbid touch hot film, exposed film. But, as we were there for 3 weeks, by the end of the 3 weeks, they would start to trust you a little bit and let you carry a lens case or...
That's great.
Yeah. So...
was there any huge names that you worked with that you remember that were amazing?
Absolutely. My first movie assignment for 3 weeks was to work on Pennies from Heaven that Gordon Willis was the director of photography.
Oh my gosh.
And I couldn't believe it. I was like, whoa.
And coming out of film school, you absolutely know who Gordon Willis is.
Absolutely.
That's what was that like? I mean,
it was crazy. It was huge. And I was this naive, inexperienced kid coming out of, film school. And all of a sudden, I was banging a slate, in front of Gordon Willis.
That's so cool.
And on that show, I met Alan Disler, legendary first assistant cameraman, and Craig Denault was the camera operator, who was a wonderful, successful, popular, amazing camera operator who taught me later in my career taught me a lot about camera operating and working on the set. And yeah, those two guys, that was amazing to meet them and work with them.
And forgive me for asking this, but is there video assist at this point?
No.
So you can't sit and watch the monitor per se.
I don't think so.
I mean, that was right on the cusp.
It was.
Maybe there was or maybe there wasn't.
It was those shows like, oh, are we going to have video assist on this show? Yes or no. But
it was an option.
Exactly.
And Pennies from Heaven was black and white, right?
I don't think so. There may have been sequences that were black and white,
right.
but I don't think the whole thing was.
Well, and did you interact with Gordon Willis much?
Oh, yeah. You know, I was the guy that picked up his Apple box, put it right under the camera every time the camera moved, put it right under the lens, and put his meter case very carefully on top of the Apple box.
So he would sit basically right in front of the camera and watch the scene?
Yeah, right next to the camera. Wow. But he always wanted his meter case right under the lens on his Apple box.
That's really cool.
Yeah, and it was great to see this powerful but quiet cinematographer in command of this huge Hollywood set. And
I was going to ask you that because, I mean, sets now are sort of chaos. Was it just... I mean, was it quiet? And
it was quiet, and if it wasn't quiet, all of a sudden you would look around and realize that nothing was happening on the set, and Gordon wasn't even on the set anymore, and the ADs were scurrying around. Where's Gordon? Where's Gordon? Nothing's happening. You know, we're at a standstill here, and it was because as soon as it got a little bit chaotic or a little conversational on the set, Gordon would put his meter back in the case and walk off the set.
Wow!
And start walking around the
That was
studio.
his way of going. When you run the set well, I'll come back.
Exactly.
What a joy!
Yeah, it was great. So I was really fortunate to get into that training program and take that.
And
around.
You said that was literally the first thing they put you on?
I think it was the first feature. They may have put me on a TV show or two before that.
Yeah.
And it was such a great situation, and Herb Ross was the director. When it came time for me to leave at the end of my 3-week thing, you know, Herb came scurrying over to me and said, "What do you mean you're leaving? You can't leave. You know, you just got here. That's crazy. Who do I have to talk to keep you on?"
That's so great.
I know, but they couldn't keep me. It was against the rules.
Wow.
Yeah.
And did you maintain a relationship with Gordon Willis past?
Yeah. You know, I crossed paths with him a few times as, I guess, mostly as a first assistant. I did a bunch of commercials with Gordon. But then later, a few years later, I did have the opportunity to work with him on extra camera as a camera operator.
And then TV-wise, did you do both like 1 hour and episodic? And I mean, did they put you on kind of everything?
Yeah, they really did.
Yeah.
It was an amazingly varied experience packed into a year of time.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think one of the first things I did was a TV movie when they used to do TV movies.
TV movies, yeah, right.
And
sorry, I said episodic. I meant sitcoms. But you know, I mean, did they just across the board? So you saw the whole gamut of everything.
Yeah, we never did any like sitcoms with live audience type stuff.
Okay.
But episodic television, lots of movies of the week.
This is a weird question, but episodic television back then, was it single camera or was it 2 cameras?
It was mostly single camera.
Okay.
I mean, I guess there were shows that carried a B camera.
But it wasn't like now where it's like 2 cameras on every setup, no matter what, sometimes 3.
Right.
But anyway.
No, it wasn't.
And back in the 70s, this was when they were doing tons of zooms and changing focal lengths and shot and this and that and the other.
Yeah. And we were doing shows like Fantasy Island and, oh gosh, what a BJ and the Bear.
BJ and the Bear. Oh my gosh, that's fantastic.
Harper Valley PTA. I just thought about Fantasy Island. I remember, I think I was a trainee, and I came onto Fantasy Island for my 3-week stint. And I was struck by Ricardo Montalban, his graciousness and his welcoming attitude. As soon as he saw a new face on the set, and I was the new face on the set one day, he would come over to you and welcome you like you were coming to his living room. Please, whatever you need, we're so happy that you're here.
That's amazing.
Welcome, and we're glad that you're part of the team.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it was great. He was
that's
such
so
a gentleman.
Yeah. Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
So that was, you said, a year.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
And so do you get paid during this, or is this
a very small amount?
Yeah.
I can't remember. I think it was like, $100 a day or something like that. It was just to keep it legal, I think.
And do those hours go towards getting into the union?
They didn't, but there was a different deal for it because you were a trainee sponsored by this union program. At the end of the year, you were automatically into the union. You were accepted into the union as a second assistant cameraman.
Oh, wow.
Camera person. And in those days, there was still a grouping system where when you first got into the local, you would be a loader, or if you're lucky, a second assistant, but you would be group 3. And you couldn't work until all the Group 2s and all the Group 1s were working.
I had no idea that the camera local had that. I know that other unions, and the Teamsters, I think, still have that, at least in some areas.
Yeah,
I know.
maybe so.
Oh, I had no idea. So if you were in Group 3 and you were on a job, and someone in Group 2's job finished, did you get bumped, or were you on that job like you stayed on that job?
Yeah, I don't remember the bumping ever happening.
Gotcha.
It was if you started the job.
That's your job.
Yeah.
But that said, so basically, when someone wanted to hire someone, they had to see what grouping they were in and make sure there was nobody ahead of them?
Yeah, I mean,
Wow.
It happened. It happens at the union. I think you had to call in and say, we're thinking of hiring this person, what, is he eligible?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was crazy.
Wow. I
and
had no
as a
idea.
trainee, though, the best deal in the world, we got the best deal in the world. They made you, at the end of the program, second assistant, Group 1.
Group 1?
Yeah.
Wow.
So you bypassed potentially 4 years of 2 years sitting in Group 3, 2 years sitting in Group.
And I got to imagine if you're in Group 3, you're not working very much no matter what.
Yeah, I mean, there were periods when it was really busy
Yeah.
and the Group 3s were working.
But and how many people? Do you know how many people were in the program for that year? Like
in the training
in
program?
the training program. I mean, is it? hundreds or-
It was like 10 or 12.
Oh, so it's not much. So
Yeah.
so what? You were in groups of 3 or something like that, and you rotated through.
Sometimes we were in a group and assigned to a project, but more often than not, we were by ourselves.
Oh, okay. That
As a
that makes
trainee.
sense because it's like here's one sort of PA for your job.
Right.
That's incredible. And so, but then I would imagine that you're all going through the same jobs,
Yep.
right? They just rotate.
Yeah.
So did you all talk to each other and sort of get the skinny ahead of time?
Yes, and I'm sure the crew people talked to each other and said, oh my God, this guy
Yeah.
is coming through. But it was such a good deal. I mean, the training program. And I should correct one thing. I think the training program, the grouping system worked like you had to stay in one group for a year. And so not 2 years, but a year is Group 3, a year is Group 2.
Before you can move up.
Then Group 1.
Gotcha.
And the grouping deal that we got to become Group 1 so quickly created a little bit of friction amongst established union
I was going to
people.
ask about this because, and also again, this wasn't that long after things opened up. So not only has it opened up, but now we're letting people in almost basically off the street, right?
Right. And there were a few people, ensconced in the loading rooms at the studios that were really, that really had a chip on their shoulder when the trainees would start to come through.
Sure.
But they were because they were well, I've been here for, 3 years and I'm still a Group 2 or whatever. And these kids are coming in, as Group 1s and skating right through here.
Wow.
So they made it difficult for us sometimes.
Gotcha.
Running the
I mean, how do you deal with that? Do you just
you just kind of bite the bullet and be as cordial and as understanding a person as you can, because if you don't, it gets around really quick that
Sure.
you're that guy that's hard to get along with.
Wow.
And that snotty kid.
And I forgot, this was when there were still loading rooms on the lots.
Yeah.
So did you ever work in a loading room?
Yeah. There was a loading room, let's see, at the Burbank Studios, which is now Warner Brothers.
Oh, yeah.
CBS, Radford, Fox, and there was one more. I can't remember offhand, but there were 4 loading rooms.
The loading room at Warner Brothers was still there when I was on ER and late 90s.
Was
so
Dick Barlow still there, or Kelly?
I didn't deal with it that much. I think I was there
You're much
once or
better
twice.
off.
But just so anybody who's listening who doesn't know, these studios would have these loading rooms, and literally you'd finish a mag, right? You'd shoot it on to a Teamster, I guess, probably. They would
Exactly.
drive it across the lot to the loading room. It would get downloaded. It would get uploaded with new film. And so were you just in the dark room for 12 hours? Or, I mean...
Well, as a trainee, they wouldn't let you
Sure.
touch hot film.
But once you got into...
But once you got in, if you were going to work in a loading room, then, yeah, they had some pretty uncomfortable shifts. Those guys were there for quite a long time. Once I got out of the training program, I never worked in a loading room.
Oh, because you were second AC when you got
Right.
out. I got you. So you never went that route. But,
Right.
and I would imagine that was probably along the lines of what you were saying, like a pretty sort of protected environment where it's only certain people work there. And
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And there was a weird dynamic. If you were, say, on a feature or even a big TV show, but mostly on a feature, and you were going to come to the lot for a few weeks to shoot, the idea of sending in your mags to the company loading room was not very popular with some assistants and cameramen.
mainly because the last 2 months, this person has been in charge of the film, and we know it's okay, and now we're just going to send it randomly somewhere. Yeah.
Exactly.
And was there any option to go? We're not doing that. We're gonna load.
It
on our own?
depends on how much clout
Sure.
the director of photography had,
I'm
or
guessing-
even the assistant.
Yeah, I'm guessing Gordon Willis would probably say if he wanted it, yeah.
Yeah, we'll load our own
Yep,
film. Thanks
yep,
very
yep.
much.
Wow, that's wild.
Yeah, it was
Uh,
weird. It was weird.
So so basically you started as a second IC in the industry, and would you just like go? I mean, did you then start working on stuff from the people that you'd met mostly?
Exactly, and that was the beauty of the training program was
Yeah.
by the end of a year, you had a phone book full of people's names and
amazing.
phone numbers, and you could, call somebody up and say, hey, remember me? I was a snot-nosed trainee kid on this, and I'm out now, I'm working, I'm a second assistant, I'd love to work with you if you need a guy.
Did you find that most of those people were open to hiring you?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, most of those people already had their own guys.
Sure.
But if they needed extra people or if they were starting something new and they wanted to try somebody else, those were good contacts to have.
So it sounds like when you were, I asked this for people who are starting out now, it sounds like when you were in the training program, you made a good impression on people, obviously. Can you quantify what you think that was? Like what aspect of your personality or what?
Well, first of all, it's, as you say, you're right. It's huge. It's a really important aspect of your personality that you get along with everybody on this crew, and that you, especially like in the training program, we're only going to be there for 3 weeks. You need to make a really good impression.
That's a good point.
Without being
really
pushy.
Yeah, yeah.
So I don't know. I think the most important characteristics for somebody starting out is just to be agreeable and show initiative, but don't push too hard. Especially if you're coming into a situation that's already established, other folks on the crew that have been there for a while. Just try to anticipate the needs of the assistants that you're working for. That was a big thing. I remember working with several first assistant camera people that were really particular about you as the second assistant or the loader anticipating what that person's needs are going to be. Like if you know you were shooting a scene and you're almost done with the scene and you're going to move to a different stage after these next few shots, get the equipment off the set, get it loaded onto the camera shelf, get ready to move, whatever you can do to expedite things. I worked with a first assistant who was very particular about his reloading of magazines onto the camera. He wanted me, or whoever the second assistant was, to stand in a very specific spot.
Wow.
Pull the loop out of the magazine, pull the film's worth of loop, about 4 or 6 inches worth of film out of the mouth of the magazine, hold it by one of the motors on the magazine right over his shoulder so that all he had to do was release the magazine on his camera, lift it a couple inches so that you could grab the top of it, get it out of his way, and put the second magazine, the fresh magazine, right over his head so he could reach up, snap it onto the camera, and thread the camera.
It's like an assembly line, basically.
Exactly. And there was a real competition amongst assistance regarding how fast they could reload the camera.
Yep, I remember this very well.
Right? And that some of these guys could snap that mag off, grab the other mag, thread it through the movement of the camera, and I'll never forget the sound of the door slamming shut. That was like, stop the clock.
Yep.
How fast did I do that?
No, that was a huge sense of pride. And actually, next time we're on set, I'm going to look at this. I have to wonder whether putting a card in and for the people who do this and formatting it on set, it's possible that might take longer than some of these people loaded.
Absolutely.
It was incredible to watch. So basically, if that was a source of pride and that's what you were like, that's how you were boasting or whatever, the fact that the second was standing exactly where you wanted it, because if you lose 2 seconds, it's
exactly. Exactly.
It's weird, the weird thing. Now, did this person take you at the beginning of the job and go, okay, I want you standing here, I want you holding, like, did they run you through it, or did you have to figure that out?
They were different. They had different ways of teaching. Some were very, specific and very nurturing and good teachers, explaining where they wanted you and how they wanted you. Others were, very short fuse and very little patience and come on, I'm waiting.
There's a lot
of
stuff that would not be tolerated today. And there's a lot of people who wouldn't have jobs today if it was the way it was back then. Yeah, and we won't name any of them, but there were certain people definitely who had reputations, shall we say.
Absolutely. And I worked for one of those people as a trainee. I won't say what show it was because then we could trace it down.
Yeah. All right.
But this person was the second. I was the trainee.
Okay.
And he was very specific about filling out camera reports. Camera reports are documents that stay with the individual magazines full of film, and they're full of information, emulsion numbers, take numbers, footages that indicate how long each take ran. And so anyway, at the end of the day, you have a camera report on each magazine with all this information written on it. Well, this person was very particular that the camera reports needed to be extremely legible and neat and perfect. And I spent many days after wrap, after a long day on the set, after copying over the camera reports because they were not up to par legibility-wise for this person. And I'm talking about these camera reports had boxes where you would fill in numbers that indicated footages. And if that footage indicated a take or a print, you would have to circle that footage, and that meant that particular take was a print. Well, if your circle didn't touch all 4 lines of the rectangle that it was circumscribed within, if you didn't hit every one of those 4 lines, the camera report was unacceptable. Write the whole thing over again.
That's psychotic. How much of that do you think was just, I'm showing you who's boss, and how much of that was maybe they're a type A personality and they just can't?
I think in that case it was probably a little of both.
Yeah.
But he was out of control.
That's next level. Wow. Yeah. But you obviously dealt with it because you just go, okay, I guess this is this gig.
Exactly.
And it was only 3 weeks. So. Right.
And that's a good example of you just have to grin and bear it and be as nice and accommodating as you can.
So is that the kind of thing where you contact all the other people coming through and you go, look, I know this is crazy, but you got a circle.
Absolutely.
Wow.
And that was a nice thing about the training program. Every once in a while, they would get all the trainees together for a lunch or dinner or something, and we'd compare notes.
Sure.
And
long before phones and texting and all that stuff.
Yeah, right.
That's unbelievable. So how long did you second for?
I seconded for probably 3 years.
Okay.
And then I moved up to first assistant and did a lot of extra cameras as a first assistant, B camera and like that.
Is that a short amount of time to be a second before moving up to a first, or was that?
It might have been a little bit short for that time.
Yeah. Well, and also basically 4 years after starting the training program, you're a first AC.
Right.
I mean, obviously people saw something in you and you did well, but.
Yeah, I was fortunate. I got put in good situations and I did pretty well in them. But, I mean, it's not a real long period of time, but I would say, if I was giving somebody advice today, I would say You don't have to be a second assistant for 3 years.
No.
You learn everything you need to learn in the first year. If you have opportunities to move ahead, there's no reason to hang out as a second assistant.
Is it the kind of thing where you started telling people, I want to be a first AC, so they give you opportunities?
Yeah. You kind of let it leak. And you talk to, when there's an opportunity, you talk to directors of photography that you've worked for as a second, saying, hey, I'm hoping this is my last show as a second. I hope you'll consider me in the future as a first,
So how old were you when you started pulling focus?
How old was I?
Yeah. I mean, you're still in your 20s?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's the reason I ask, not specifically, but the reason that I ask is I would think for back then you were probably pretty young compared to most ACs. Maybe that's my recollection of it, but
maybe a little bit.
Yeah,
maybe a little bit on the young side.
Was there an issue with that, or with people accepting you?
There wasn't really an issue. Yeah. I mean, there were plenty of first assistants that were older folks, and were pretty entrenched, and maybe that was a problem for them.
Yeah.
But I didn't really feel any, prejudice because of how young I was.
So just for anybody listening now who's making films, to remind them, so you were sitting on the dolly or standing next to the dolly or standing next to whatever the entire time with the camera operator. And so I mean, that's one of the things that really drives me nuts now, because there was so much that you just learned through osmosis. Forget about listening and everything, but just like being there, right?
Yeah, as you say, standing right next to the camera, right next to the camera operator, physically connected to the camera. You had, as a first assistant, you had your hand on the focus wheel, the focus knob, and the first assistant's job primarily is to keep things in focus, and for those of you that don't know, that's accomplished by turning this focus knob and figuring out that when the subject leans forward 6 inches, you've got to turn that knob so the lens moves 6 inches on the focus ring. And you're right there next to the camera operator. Oftentimes you're whispering to each other during the shot, okay, I'm gonna go over to this person after this line, get ready. And there was that, Dave, as you mentioned, there was that connection, that camaraderie of working together so closely. That
big time.
Yeah, it's really too bad that's
well, and
gone.
the other thing that I think people don't think about, and I actually just recently sort of remembered this, is, now, and I don't say this in a bad way, but now focus pulling is a little bit of a video game. It's like they're watching a monitor, and in fairness to focus pullers, because the depth of field is so, I mean, it's in focus or it's out of focus.
Yeah.
There's no other, like, they can't do it any other way, and they've got these heads-up displays, I would call them, over the thing. I don't know how they look at anything. It's beyond me. But back then, you would have to sort of be constantly calculating the depth of field, and you would have what was the white sliding?
There was a Kelly wheel.
The Kelly wheel was the round one,
one,
and then there was that white lucite thing, the Sammy,
maybe,
something like that.
Yeah.
But and I remember it had all these like, I don't know, these graphs on it, and you would sort of put it up and put all the information in, and then you'd know this to this is in focus if I put it at this. So the thing being that always amazed me about great focus pullers, and I pulled focus for a year, so I had a taste of it, but was if they're at 6 feet, you wouldn't necessarily put it at 6 feet. You'd put it at 8 feet maybe because you knew you had 10 feet to 6 feet or whatever. So it was just this constant math in your mind, right?
Yeah, right.
That's amazing.
And in those days, the operator could really help the first assistant with focus because the camera operator is looking through the lens, and that was the best look at focus on the set. There were no high resolution monitors that other people could be sort of looking over your shoulder and making sure you're getting it in focus. It was really the operator that knew whether it was in focus or not. And different operators made that a priority or didn't make that a priority. And I always thought that was an important part of the camera operator's job, was helping the assistant with focus, keeping an eye on the eyeballs of the subject in the frame and making sure that those eyeballs are sharp. And if they're not, whispering to the assistant, come forward just a couple inches or roll back just a couple inches. Yeah, so they were a real team as far as focus goes in those days.
And when you started working with a new operator that you either didn't have information on, you didn't know, or whatever, was the first day sort of the figuring out, can they see focus, can't they? Because there must be some operators who just weren't good at it or didn't care or whatever.
Absolutely, yeah. You're right. You first time you're working with a new operator as an assistant, you're like wondering if he's going to be helping you or not. You kind of have to assume he's not going to be, but
then hopefully it's better than what you assume.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's and then you were back then you were going to dailies, right? Were you going to dailies every day?
It depended on the project. You know, in TV there were some dailies, but the TV schedules were so long and hard during the day. It was hard to. Sometimes at lunchtime we'd scurry over to a screening room and watch dailies. But on features, on the movies that I was working on, there were dailies, usually after work. If we were on location, definitely after work. And that was another look at focus. Of course, it was a day late. You were looking at what was already in the can, and if the assistant missed on the focus, it was up there on the screen. But dailies were that was a great tradition, another tradition that I miss, because a lot of times, depending on the crew, people from all departments would come and watch dailies if they were welcome, and it made it feel much more like a team effort when everybody could come and. You know, the hairdressers could see what it looked like on screen, what they were doing. The makeup artists could see what effect they were having. You know, the assistant could watch eyeballs the whole time and make sure they were sharp. I always thought it was funny because, you know, if you turned around and looked at who was in the audience at dailies, they were all looking at a different thing. You know, the operator was looking at the headroom. The assistant was looking at eyeballs.
It's a selfish business.
Absolutely.
There's no question about it. Do you remember any dailies that you went into where it just was not in any way what you expected? I mean, it just threw you? Or did you always sort of like, I know that take was slightly out of focus?
Right. No, there were definitely times when, you know, there was like a problem. It might have been a lens that was out of calibration or some miscommunication. But, yeah, there were some of those uncomfortable times in dailies where you see something about to happen and you're like, oh, God, that lens is... You know, I'm 3 inches behind it. His ear's in focus, but his eyes are soft.
The worst. It was both the best and the worst experience at the same time.
One of the best experiences in dailies that I had was with Alan Disler. I think it was Alan, and Craig Dedahl was the camera operator, and we were doing a movie called Slugger's Wife. Caleb Deschanel was the DP. Hal Ashby was the director. It was amazing. But we would have dailies after work. We were in Atlanta, shooting at Atlanta Fulton County Stadium, baseball. And after work, most nights, we would have dailies back at the hotel or something. And for some reason, we ended up waiting for, I can't remember who, but several nights in a row, just sitting and waiting. We couldn't start dailies until this person got there. And you know, Craig and I kind of got tired of it. So just an aside quickly, we were shooting at this baseball stadium, and we didn't have enough people to fill the whole stadium, so we had a lot of cardboard cutouts in the deep background of the seats. So Craig and I one day got to dailies a little early, and we brought 2 cardboard cutouts with us and we stashed them under the seats, and people started to fill into dailies. And finally, whoever the person was that we were waiting for showed up. The lights went out. As soon as the lights went out, Craig and I put our cardboard cutouts in our usual seats in dailies and snuck out.
That's great.
And went back to the hotel bar. And
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
So I have to ask you, before we move on to operating, about, because you were the first AC on True Romance and Midnight Run, which are 2 of my favorite movies. Any stories from those? Were they great to work on?
They were great to work on for, different reasons. True Romance, Tony Scott was the director. And he just...
I've heard nothing but amazing things about Tony Scott.
He just loved to have a good time doing what he was doing, and he was so good at, directing and working with actors.
What a fun movie. I mean, across the board. Just crazy.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know if you remember, there's a scene in the hotel that's a crazy shootout where people are fighting, and
with
there's
the feathers from the
all
pillows,
over the
of course.
place.
Yeah.
It's like snowing blizzard of feathers through the whole scene. And I just remember looking around in the middle of one of those takes at this craziness going on in this big Hollywood set, you know, and Tony Scott's directing, and there's so many feathers you can't even see the people in the scene. And I just thought, wow, I'm so fortunate to be in a place like this. This is great.
That's the best when you're in the middle of something like that and you're like, this is the craziest job in the world.
Right.
That's fantastic.
I'm trying to remember now. I was the B assistant on that.
Who was the operator? Do you remember?
Greg Lunsgaard.
Oh, yeah.
Great operator, great Steadicam operator. We had a good time on that show.
That's fantastic.
Yeah. And then, what was it? Oh, Midnight Run.
Midnight Run. I can't even imagine getting to watch Grodin and De Niro do what they did in the movie. I'm
trying to think. We took that show over from the original DP about halfway through, so I had half of the show as the experience. But Don Thorne Sr. was the DP. Rob Hahn was the A-camera operator, and I was his assistant. And Rob and I, we had a history of working together. I think I worked with him as a second when he was a first, and then I worked with him several times as a first when he was an operator. And he's got a really silly sense of humor, as do I sometimes on the set. And we just always had a really good time working together. And I remember many times being on the dolly with Rob, laughing at what De Niro and Chuck Grodin were doing, that the whole camera is shaking.
I don't know how that... it's funny you say that, because there are scenes in that movie where I don't understand how the camera's not shaking.
Yeah, it must be, because I remember, trying not to laugh. I was like, Rob, we got to stop laughing. The camera's wiggling. It's leaning back
I'll
and
tell
forth.
you, one of my favorite moments in any movie, but especially that movie, is De Niro is in a phone booth, and I think he's talking to the bail bondsman.
Right.
And he's basically saying, if you don't give me my money, I will put a knife through his head. I will cut his heart out. I mean, like, it's just horrible. And Charles Grodin has this look on his face, and De Niro just sort of turns to him and shakes his head like, no, I'm not really going to do that.
Right.
And it's such a great moment.
Right.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
That movie, and I mean, Yaphet Kotto, it's just like across the board. But so I mean, I guess you just try not to laugh, or do you try to think about terrible things, or how do you get around that when you're in those situations?
I'm sure I probably had to walk away a little bit every once in a while, just so I wasn't. So Rob and I weren't like setting each other off all the time.
And that's the other problem, is that you start to feed off of each other, right? Yeah,
absolutely.
You get in those moods. But that's great. So when you're working with someone like De Niro, I mean, you're working with these giants like De Niro and Grodin. I mean, across not just them. I mean, Joey Pants, and I mean, everybody in that movie is amazing.
Yeah, it's true.
How do you work with big actors like that? For people who are starting to work with actors and they run into these huge actors who, I don't know about you, but like I've worked with a couple people where it's just like, I can't believe I'm standing 5 feet from you, and you sort of have to push that out. Like, how do you do that?
Yeah, well, you just do. You just have to, treat them like the regular people that they are, with huge amounts of respect. But there are certainly times when it's intimidating. When as you say, they're such big, huge stars, and you're asking them to come forward an inch on that mark. You got to be nice about it. You got to be understanding about it.
Also, back then you're pulling your tape out to Robert De Niro's nose, right?
Yeah.
I mean, there's that whole thing, right? Which they understand, but still, it's always
Not everybody, not all of them really understand it, or they understand it, but they don't. Yeah. Tolerate it.
I won't ask you who, of course, but do you remember as an assistant working with really tough actors?
Yeah.
And what do you do in those situations?
I often try to make light of the situation, like make a joke or a funny comment, not at their expense, but just kind of lighten up break
the tension,
mood a little bit. Yeah.
And did that? I mean, were there times where that worked, and times where it was just like, this is just going south and it's going to be horrible?
I think it went south more than it worked. But you figure out a way to get what you need.
Yeah. Do you know who Tommy Shalami is?
Yeah.
Yeah. I interviewed Tommy Shalami early on. He's a friend, and we've worked together for a long time. And he said something really interesting to me that I never considered before. And I'm sure it's not, look, in life there are some people who are not nice people, like, and it does not actors, but I mean, bus drivers and whatever, right?
Yeah.
That just happens. But he said, more often than not, what he finds is that when he has an actor who's just acting out and just not happy and cruel and whatever, he said, more often than not, they are petrified.
Yeah.
And you don't realize it, and this is how but it's because they have some emotional thing that they have to do, or they're not sure if they're up to the task or whatever. And he said the same way that you're petrified when you come up on some huge shot that you're not sure you can do or whatever, but you're not allowed. It's not tolerated as part of the thing that you can be that way. But sometimes with the actors it is. And I thought, oh, that's a really interesting. I never thought about that.
Yeah,
before.
that makes a lot of sense.
And again, not pulling anybody out, but like you look at Robert De Niro and you go, well, you're an amazing actor. You can do everything, but I'm sure he's all these actors, they have some area where they're out of their element. So how long did you pull focus before you jumped to operating?
Too long, especially in those days when you're losing sleep because you're worried about a shot that you're not going to see the results of until the next day.
Yeah,
it's really, I think first assistant cameraman in those days was one of the hardest, and probably still is, the hardest jobs on the set, and often underappreciated. So I did it for 10 years or so, and by the end of it, I was unhappy as a focus puller.
Mainly because of that, like just the constant tension of I'm not going to be able to rest until I see dailies, but the minute I'm seeing dailies, I've already shot something else that I'm nervous about.
Yeah, it just wears you down.
I guess now you have the instant feedback, but so maybe just the timing of it is less, but it's still
other pressures.
And the focus, and I think it's harder to pull focus now than it was then. I mean, it has to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know how they do it now.
No, it's incredible. The other thing that I've noticed, I don't know if you've noticed this, was when digital started, I felt like they were always following the action.
Reacting, right?
Yeah, reacting. Because, it used to be when you were on the dolly, like you felt the dolly moving, so you knew you were going, and it's always a second behind. But I think it's almost caught up. Like the technology has gotten so good, and maybe people have adjusted. I don't know. I don't see it as much as I used to.
You're totally right, but I marvel at that. I think I
don't know how to do it.
What changed? How it's still got to be reactive.
No, they're like fighter pilots.
Yeah.
It's like the and especially the really good focus pullers. It's funny because I'll finish some massive Steadicam shot or something, and the director will come up and go, "That was unbelievable," and I go, "All I had to do was keep him in frame." Right. I have no idea how this person,
right?
And it's not false, whatever. It's the truth. I just don't understand how they can do that.
Absolutely.
And just out of curiosity, because we're talking about that, you never pulled focus, obviously, on digital. Like you were long before that.
Yeah. No.
You think you could do it? Is it a different skill set?
It's definitely a different. I think it's a different skill set.
Right, it has to be.
Yeah, because as you say, when your hand's on the knob, you're looking at the actor, you're anticipating a little bit of a move and stuff. I don't see how you can get that information from a video monitor.
Well, and the other, you bring up a really interesting point, because when they're offset, like even if they're on set but they're looking at their monitor, which they have to, if I'm in a close-up, they don't see what I see, which is their foot starting to pivot, because they don't have all that extra information.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, that's really kudos to everybody who does it well, because I don't know how they do it. But so 10
for me, 10 years was too much.
and I mean, did you just get to the point where you're like, I don't? Did you not like it, or you were just like, this is too much stress to put up with?
Probably both.
Yeah.
It was a lot of stress, and it was kind of wearing me down. But I also wanted to move on and try, new things.
Sure.
And I had always, from the day I walked onto the Pennies from Heaven set and saw Craig Denault sitting on the dolly, this perfect. I mean, Craig was always perfectly dressed and perfectly coiffed and in charge of the set, and I thought, that's the guy I want to be.
Okay.
So I always wanted to eventually get to camera operating.
But just before we move on to operating, that is clearly you were a sought after first AC. I mean, obviously you worked on a lot of big things, and whatever. It's hard to like. I mean, even though you want to, it's hard to go, well, I got this thing that's working really well, and then people just keep calling me, and then I'm going to step into I'm going to close the door. Right.
Well, one thing that helped with that was that as an assistant, I worked for Don Thorne Sr. a lot.
Yeah.
And Donnie knew that I was interested in moving up to
that's
camera
cool.
operator.
Yeah.
We had talked about it, and he always promised me, that when the time was right, he said, "I'll move you up on the B camera if you want, and that'll kind of get you started, but then you'll be out of the fold then. I won't be able to hire you as because I still have Freddie Smith as my A camera operator."
Yeah.
But I always knew toward the end of that 10 years that Donnie was planning to help me move up.
That's cool.
So he had a movie coming up called Little Big League, another baseball movie that was going to be all out of town in Minneapolis, I think. And there was something about moving up out of town that felt a little less pressured to me. Like you were kind of out of the way. If you did something horrible, maybe they wouldn't hear about it back in Hollywood.
At least those are the games you play with yourself.
Right. And Donnie felt that way too. He said, we got this movie coming up in Minneapolis. It might be a good place and time to move up. So he moved me up on the B camera on that show. And I'll never forget the first shot that I had to do on the B camera was a pretty intricate shot, at least I thought it was for me. It was kind of a medium long lens shot, panning through a landscape, getting to a river, seeing on the river that there's a bridge with two kids sitting on it that are fishing, tilt down their fishing lines to the water that they're fishing in, which is a running river, pan with that running river downstream and open up or end up on a wide landscape at the end of the shot. So it was a little intricate for a new operator, and I'll never forget looking through the eyepiece and seeing with my left eye open that my hands were just shaking like crazy.
Oh, no.
And I was on the gearhead, which Don Thorne insisted on. He learned on the gearhead.
That's great.
And he made sure that all the operators used gearheads.
What had you been? I mean, you'd been practicing, I'm assuming. So
Yes.
On set, you just go at lunch or whatever. Or?
Well, that's another nice story. When the movie I did right before Little Big League, when I knew I was going to move up on the B camera, I started to prepare to be an operator on that show. And so the preceding show was The Next Karate Kid that Laszlo Kovacs shot, and I'd worked for Laszlo as an assistant a bunch of times. And Craig was the operator. Craig Denault was the operator. So between Craig and Laszlo, they let me do all the rehearsals as an operator.
Oh, that's great.
I was the lead assistant, first assistant, but whenever we were rehearsing, he put me in the operator's chair, Craig did, and Laszlo was fine with it, and let me do the rehearsals. So I got to practice on a real set with real moves, sometimes with real actors, for a whole
That's fantastic.
3 months.
Another thing that won't happen today because there are no rehearsals anymore. But
Yeah,
that's
right.
another story.
But I actually and we were in Boston, Craig would say, bring the camera back to the hotel this weekend and bring a 10-to-1 and a set of sticks and a gearhead.
That's great.
And we'll go we found a park behind the hotel, and he would drill me on different ways to follow this guy playing basketball over there. Now do it on 100 millimeters.
Wow.
Now do
so
it.
you were set up for success, but yet you were still shaking when you were.
Yeah, because
was it because you didn't feel you were up to speed on the wheels, or just because it's like I'm actually doing this and?
I think it was because I'm actually doing this, and here it is, the moment I've been waiting for, And no, I knew which way to turn the wheels. I didn't have to think about it. I got to actually. We had in those days on Next Karate Kid, we carried a crane with us, a camera crane, but a real ride-on camera crane where the assistant, the operator, and sometimes the director would ride on the crane. It was a Titan crane. And I actually got to do rehearsals on a Titan crane, panning not just the camera, but the whole turret
right?
around.
I hated that thing.
Oh, God. Well, you were turning this wheel, and you were moving the inertia of you, the assistant, and
it was nuts. I mean, that wheel
director.
was what, 8 inches wide or something like that, and you're turning this massive turret with
trying to make a
400
smooth
pounds.
move, right, and then trying to stop it smoothly.
Oh,
but I had that experience behind me, which was invaluable.
That's great. So, but what was the biggest sort of head game with moving up to operating, or the toughest hurdle that you had?
I think it was the fear of financial ruin. I mean, here I am now. I've been in the business for a while, bought a house, moved to a bigger house, got 3 kids, a lot of responsibility financially. I know I'm not going to work as much as I was as a first assistant when I first moved up to camera operator. So that was scary. But, you see it coming, you prepare for it, you put money aside,
And how long, I mean, so that movie was probably, a couple months or something like that?
The first one as an operator? Yeah, 3 months.
By the end of that, did you feel like, I can do this? Or
I felt like I could do anything.
How long did it take till you got to that point?
In Boston, at the end of that, I felt pretty good.
Yeah.
Because Craig taught me so many things. And certainly by the middle of Little Big League, halfway through as the real B camera operator, everything felt fine.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
That's great. And so at some point you moved up to A camera, and was My So-Called Life the first thing that you did A camera on?
Yikes. Probably. Yeah, probably
or first,
television.
Longer format thing.
Yeah, right. Big commitment.
I just have to ask you, was that a great thing to work on? Because I love that show.
It's such a great show.
So many people have not seen that show, and it was only one season.
Yeah.
And I don't know how Winnie Holtzman, who must have been 40 or something like that,
right.
wrote a teenage story that is that
so on the money.
Spot on.
Yeah.
Not to mention, it has the moment where Jared Leto has to step in for, I think her friend's name is Amber or August or something like that, and sing I Want to Be Sedated.
Right, for Rayanne.
Rayanne, that's right. Yeah. And he sings it, and it's just like, wow, this guy's like a rock star, and here he is now.
The rock star, yeah.
But I mean, every single person in that show was talented. The writing was fantastic.
The writing was amazing. Yeah, and the kids were great. They were all these young kids.
Incredible. In a weird way, I'm actually sort of happy that it was only 1 year because it really is. It's like
gem.
The perfect show.
Yeah.
But was it a great experience to work on?
Oh yeah, it was. I mean, there were things that made day-to-day difficult, but on the whole, it was so good. It was so funny. It was so human. It was so well done. It wasn't the most organized set in the world.
Well, you had all those kids too, right? They were all underage.
Yeah,
that had to be crazy.
Yeah, a lot of them were. So there were scheduling things, and we can only have her for this amount of time, so we can't do another take. And it was a little the running of the set was a little disorganized, and that was a little difficult for a new operator because. I wanted things to run like clockwork, and it didn't always happen that way.
But did you basically, were you pretty much on A camera from that point on, give or take?
Yeah, there was maybe. There were probably a couple things in between that I'd go back on B camera, but that was sort of the beginning of the A camera slope.
And then from there, to look at your resume, it's just like massive movie after massive movie after massive movie.
I was so fortunate
That's fantastic.
To get those good projects and work with really good people.
Can you talk to me about, as far as being the A camera operator, stepping into sort of, I've said this 9 million times on here, people say the A camera operator has to run the set, and I always have a little problem with that because it's not really, I mean, the AD runs the set,
right.
but I sort of feel like because we're in the center of everything and we kind of touch everything, we try to make sure that it doesn't devolve into chaos, mainly out of personal, because it's gonna not give me as much time to do my job.
Yeah, right.
Can you just talk about that, being involved in that and what that's like?
I think you're right. The first assistant director is the guy that runs the set, or should be the guy that runs the set, but next in line, I think, is the A camera operator, because quietly, he's got to make sure everything is running, all the preparation for executing the shot is happening. And sometimes the first AD, the first assistant director, has a lot of other responsibilities, so he may not be able to keep an eye on all the specific little nuts and bolts that it takes, to approach being ready on the set to make the shot. And that falls then on the A camera operator. The A camera operator has got to be in touch with everybody on the set, with the set dressers. Do we have to make any adjustments in moving furniture or window shades? Or it's got to be in touch with the gaffer. It's what the gaffer's doing lighting-wise, affecting, what we're going to have to be able to do in terms of moving the camera and telling the story. Is the key grip getting everything ready to support you at the camera, particularly your dolly grip? It is the communication taking place between your dolly grip and you, so that you guys are ready to go and when it's time to roll the camera. There's just so many things going on in preparation for rolling that shot that the camera operator can see and help facilitate getting those things done.
Yeah, a lot of time, I mean, it's funny, and I say it's selfish, but I find what I'm doing is I sort of have this tunnel vision of like what is going to stop me from being successful in what we have to do.
Right.
and that sort of informed, because I'm constantly looking around, because I mean, as you mentioned, it's like, and nothing against them, but it's like the gaffer and the key grip are constantly bringing that stuff closer into frame, and you're looking at it going, I know he's going to stand up, and we're going to, so, and all that stuff. But it's just this, someone that I just interviewed just moved up to B camera. He's actually a dolly grip, but he's been in 600 for a while because his dream is to be an operator.
Yeah.
And I was on a show where we moved him up, and I asked him about it, and he said the thing that he said, I know this because I'm behind you all the time watching it, but I didn't recognize it, is just how you don't ever really get a moment where you can stop thinking.
Right.
And I sort of realized that it's like, oh, that's why I'm so tired.
Absolutely, it's nonstop.
It is nonstop.
If you're good at it,
yeah.
and if you understand what your job is.
Well, and even if something isn't going on, I sort of feel like if I stop, something will happen,
Yeah.
and then I'll hate myself because I didn't catch it.
It's true. It's like to step off the dolly and to run to the restroom for a minute or two. The whole time you're gone from the set, you're thinking, what's going on in there? Is it falling apart? How will it be okay for another 90 seconds till I get back to the set?
You know Don Devine, right?
Oh, yeah.
Don has this thing where he goes, it's like the hardest thing in the world is to go pee. And he says, I'll literally tell everybody, be like, well, don't, I'm just going for 30 seconds. And it's one of those, like the trope from the bad TV show where, like, you go through the swinging door and, like, it swings and you walk through and then you come right back through. And he goes, and, like, I walked out and it was a Western and now it's like a romantic comedy and I don't know what's changed. But it's true. Like, and suddenly you'll come and be like, why is that in the middle of the frame?
Yeah,
it is. It's I mean, it's humorous, but it really is true.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
And what about working with the boom operator? Because that's something we don't talk about a lot.
Yeah, I mean, that's huge. And there's a whole range of boom operators. I mean, some guys, sometimes the boom operator, it'll start to feel like he's part of the camera crew, because I think if he's really good at what he does, in addition to putting the mic where it has to be to sound good, he's got to be thinking like the people on the camera crew are thinking. You know, like, where can I put this mic that's not going to cause a shadow, that's going to be close enough to get decent sound, that's not going to put the camera operator in jeopardy. I can think of some shots where the boom operator is just not dialed in and just not paying attention, and all of a sudden you're in the middle of a shot and you're being forced to tilt down because the mic is pushing on the top of the frame, and you see it coming and it's killing you, and you're in agony, but you either have to cut or keep tilting down and hope that there's some shot left by the time.
It's funny because that's one thing that has significantly changed, because now it's you hold the frame because you know that it's just taking it out.
Yeah,
but
sure.
But is there a way when you start a show and as a boom operator you don't know, are you looking for telltale signs just to figure out, like, does this person know what they're doing, or like, are there things that you look for, or you?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I look for is the boom operator looking at me? Because I'd like to have communication with that person, especially in the beginning, so we kind of get used to how each other works. But I'm often, I operate with my right eye looking through the camera and my left eye open, and one of the places I'm looking with that left eye oftentimes is the boom.
Yeah.
The boom operator.
Yeah, there's a couple of operators that I've worked with that, well, they call it the whale eye, and they'll say they'll look over and they could just see the white of my eye going, and they're like, "What's wrong? What am I missing?" Right. But yeah, there's that communication that goes on. I often, well, I'm guessing you probably do this as well, as like the first rehearsal. I just sort of will. I generally am trying to clock who's paying attention and who's not. Like, is my dolly grip kind of like, near me, and is the boom operator like looking around for things or whatever, and,
Right.
and then you know who you have to keep more of an eye on and who you don't, and
Sure.
whatever. But
Sure.
operating specifically, I wanted to ask you a couple of things. When you're coming to land a frame, do you find like anchor points? I call them anchor points, but like visual cues of where to go?
Sometimes if it's if it's a shot that's driven by the architecture, or something specific in the frame, if it's an actor that's the important element in the frame, then my end frame or important frame is driven by what the actor's doing, where they are.
Yeah.
But if it's architectural or some other little bit that's important, I'll sometimes use things in the set. And Don Thorne Sr. Gave me a great tip as a young operator when I was first starting. And it seems like it's obvious when you talk about it, but I was doing some shot where, it was a long pan, and Donnie wanted me to hit a very specific end frame. He operated a bunch for Gordon Willis. So Donnie's a stickler about, okay, here's the opening frame and here's the end frame. And the end frame, I want you to put the left sideline right up against that building. And I mean, I could almost hear, Gordon Willis talking through him. And so anyway, I would have to hit some very specific frames. And he would say, don't, if you're panning right to left, and this is a little hard to visualize over the podcast, but if you're panning in one direction, find that end frame and find the sideline that's going to intersect with that end frame, but the sideline that's in the shot, the whole last part of the shot. That doesn't make any sense. But in other words, as you're panning, if you know the side of that building there is going to be your end frame, watch the side of that building and
Watch
line
it move through the frame, basically.
Exactly.
So you know where it ends.
Right, as opposed to picking a sideline on the other side, which isn't going to be in the shot until the very last instant.
You want something that you can clock as you're moving and then go, and it's there, as opposed to like something you find. I mean, sometimes that just doesn't exist,
right,
depending on what it is. But I know what you mean. No, but that's a great piece of advice, and it is, like you say, as soon as you hear it, you go, well, that's common sense.
Right.
But it's not common sense until you know it.
Right.
There's no question about that.
Yeah,
that's great.
So that's handy.
Were there any other operating tips you can offer up that you learned from him? Or anyone?
Just to get as comfortable as you can, if you're on a dolly or however you're doing it, just make sure that, especially if you're panning or adjusting the frame in some way, make sure your last position is a comfortable position.
Yeah.
Start out uncomfortable, and then as the shot develops, make sure you get to that comfortable position.
Yeah.
And that can be, but that can be something as simple as changing a piece of equipment to make it more comfortable at the end, or like if you're on a dolly and you have to climb over the arm of the dolly, you could put a very simple piece of equipment. You could put a riser underneath the camera that allows you to drop the arm on the dolly.
Sure, so you don't have to crawl over it.
So you don't have to climb over it and make it comfortable for yourself. You can just walk straight across because the arm isn't impeding your progress anymore.
And ideally, and especially if you've worked with them for a while, a good dolly grip will be looking at this going, can I make this more comfortable for you? Because you look,
absolutely.
That's the best thing in the world.
But
since you brought up equipment, one of the things that I think is huge is using the right piece of equipment to get the shot, which isn't always, unfortunately, an option, but hopefully it's not. And I'm wondering, did you used to, when you were reading the script, did you sort of like make mental notes if something was in the script of, I should talk to them about getting this, or we should get this, or?
Yeah, for the things that really stand out, like if it's a scene on the outside of a building where two guys are crawling up the outside of the building, you might want to suggest a crane and a remote head and a particular kind of crane. But yeah, if it's something big that sort of presents itself in the script, I would make notes like that. I guess I didn't always get too specific about lenses or anything else, but something big, yeah.
Another thing I want to ask you about is just the concept of committing when you're operating.
What do you mean by committing?
Well, the thing of like, someone starts to walk and you start to pan and maybe they stop for a second, and that thing of, do you keep the pan and hope that they continue to walk, or do you stop with them? Because sometimes there's that thing of like, well, if I sort of stutter and don't go, it's almost not a usable shot. So maybe I should just commit to the pan or the tilt or whatever.
Right.
It also makes me think about, and I'll ask you this about standing someone up out of a chair, which to me was always and still sometimes is, depending on the person,
Absolutely.
the hardest thing in the world. But that you sort of have to go, all right, they're going for it. I just got to commit and hope that they're in there. So
right.
Yeah, I mean, is there like, is that something you think about, or?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely, and there's some actors that, are going to give you trouble with those sort of moves that you want to commit, but the actor's not committing.
Yep.
And I guess you kind of have to figure out which type of actor you're dealing with. That might help a little bit to decide whether, okay, when he goes, I'm going to go, and I'm just going to keep going.
Yeah.
If you had to choose one or the other, or should you stop and
Stop
pause?
and start.
Yeah, I guess I would go with the commit one, just because I like the shot better and hope that the person doesn't fall out of the shot.
That's what I mean, that's sort of where I go with, but the bottom line is you can win or lose that game, and there's no way.
Absolutely.
There's no way to know. What about standing someone up from a chair? Is there any tips for people on how to do that?
When I watch a movie and I see somebody standing up out of a chair, it still scares the hell out of me.
Literally, I'll be in scenes, they'll be like, he could just stand the whole time. Why does he have to sit?
Right.
Because it is, and especially, and I'm sure you remember this, there's some actors that are just, it's horrible, and you go, I know they're going to go into a close-up of this.
Yeah.
It's just,
It's so hard. There's some actors, as you say, there's some actors that understand what the operator's doing.
Those are the best,
yeah.
right?
And you don't even have to talk to those actors, because they'll telegraph they're going to start the move. They'll get up nice and slow. They won't lean forward first and then straighten up and then stand up. And we love those actors.
Well, or the ones who take one, it's just, and they'll come back and they'll go, oh, I just completely messed with you. I'm so I will take it much slower. I mean, then okay, we're in good.
Right.
Good
and it's hard sometimes not to groan in the middle of a shot when you've chopped somebody's head off. In the old days, when I worked for Don Thorne Sr. a lot, he's very old school. And I don't know if it's more a function of the film world versus the digital world now, or what, but if he was doing a shot and somebody stood up too fast and he clipped their head or cut their head off, he would cut the camera.
Yeah. You're saying when he was operating?
When Donnie was operating, yeah.
Just wouldn't even give it to him.
No.
Yeah.
And that was his theory. He said, if it's no damn good, cut the camera.
Yep.
That way they can't use it. You don't have the shot. And it was a little difficult for me, because I was training under Donnie.
Yeah.
He wanted me to do that. And in my early operating career, I would cut the camera. And
did you get flack for that?
Not at first.
Yeah.
But later on, as things progressed, I feel like toward the digital age, people were really bent out of shape if I cut the camera.
Yeah, that's like a cardinal sin now. It's like, why? I mean, even in between takes, it's like, why did you cut? And there's this weird thing, especially now, it's getting worse, where people think that if you cut in between takes, it creates time, it
takes
wastes
more time. Yeah.
And it's just like,
it's ridiculous.
Well, and I understand what they're saying, because there's some ADs who are like, well, then hair comes in and makeup comes in. It's like, well, they're only coming in because you're not controlling the set to a point where they're not. But it's just like, we shouldn't just keep rolling and rolling and rolling.
Or maybe they're coming in because there's beads of sweat running down.
For a reason that they should be coming in. There's no question about that.
Right.
Now, since we talked about hair and makeup, how much did you feel as an operator was part of your job pre-digital and on all that? Where one of the things with digital, of course, is like, most of the people on set are looking at a better image than I am, or a bigger image at least than I am. Flyaways and beads of sweat and whatever. When you're 4 feet away from Robert De Niro and there's some attention needed, do you scream it out around the set, or do you quietly turn to the AD, or what do you?
Yeah, quietly.
Yeah,
quietly.
But you feel that that's part of your job, is to keep an eye on that.
Absolutely, and if it means that you have to cut a take, I think it's okay to say, I'm sorry, we have a problem. I just need to cut for a second and make an adjustment.
Yeah.
because otherwise you're just wasting everybody's time.
Yeah.
But you can't do it like we did it in the old days, right? Cut! It's no good.
I miss those days.
Yeah.
And what story? Do you obviously when you get a job, you're going to read the script, but do you read the script multiple times? So you read,
Yeah, I usually read it at least a couple of times. Yeah, because our job is to tell the story visually using the camera and movement and lenses. But, so we need to feel the story. We need to understand the story so we can translate it into what we do, move the camera, find the frame.
I often find that, as an operator, I don't like to think of myself as an A to B person. I like to think of myself as the person who's telling the story because it's going A to B, and I think it helps informs it, right?
Absolutely.
It changes things.
Yeah.
And back when you were in the heyday of operating, were you coming up with ideas to the director and DP? Were you involved in that process?
It depends.
Yeah.
You can feel whether they're open to that kind of input or not. And if they are, it's a wonderful feeling to be, part of the creative process at that level.
Yeah.
Yeah. Whenever possible, I would love getting involved in that.
I have to ask you about The Perfect Storm,
Mm-hmm.
because I don't remember, but I think that you and I may have met on that because I can't remember the timing, but I think Clooney might have been off of ER by then, but just barely. But you were on stage, I think, 16 at Warner Brothers, the one with the big tank.
Yeah.
And he came by one day and he's like, "You guys got to see what we're doing." And of course we were like, "What?" And he took us over there. And I just remember, and again, that's why I don't remember meeting you, but if you were there, chances are it was interesting. And but I remember there was like a controller that they allowed him to turn, and that huge ship just moved side to side. It was almost, and there was something with. Like water.
Oh yeah.
But there were like water slides that they shot water down that made it into a wave, or that was the craziest.
Yeah,
set.
they called those dump tanks.
That makes sense.
And the reservoir was up almost as high as the perms.
It must have been, right?
Yeah, almost up to the ceiling. And I forget the volume. It was like 10,000 or 20,000 gallons of water that they would release at one shot, and it would come down this sort of slide.
Yeah.
And at the bottom of the slide would be this sharp turn that would aim the water right at the side of the boat, and it would just crash against the boat, and there'd be water everywhere.
That was incredible.
And that was just one thing. They had they called them jet engines to blow the
I remember
mist
that too.
around.
Yeah. Absolutely. And they literally, I don't know if they actually were jet engines, but they certainly look like that.
Yeah, I think they called them that because they sounded like that. The sound was incredible. And then we also had wave makers, which were these big, they looked like big barrels that the mechanism would push them underwater and then lift them up, and push them underwater and lift them up to churn up the surface of the water. And at the beginning of the take, it was Alan Curtis was the first AD, I'm pretty sure. Is that right? I might have that wrong. But anyway, at the beginning of the take, the first AD would get on the PA system and crank all the effects up before we rolled the cameras. So he would say, "Okay, start the jet engines. Okay, start the wave machines." And this just incredible sound would start to build inside of stage 16. And you felt like you were in the middle of a hurricane. And then roll the cameras, and there's stuff flying everywhere. And we had 2 cameras on 50-foot techno cranes, remote heads swinging around out over the tank. And then the AD would yell, "Okay, dump tank," and the dump tank would release the 10,000 gallons would come down the slide and just explode over the side of the ship, and it was chaos. It was we were in the middle of a hurricane.
Does that actually help your operating in a weird way?
Oh yeah, I think so. I think so. And John Seal was the director of photography. It definitely helped his operating. He would always jump on the wheel that controlled the roll of the heads.
Yeah.
That would make it look like the whole
third
world
axis.
was sliding, rotating. So, And he would get carried away in the middle of these takes. He'd start to roll the camera like, oh, the boat is, going to tip that way. Oh, no, it's coming back this way. And we're trying to keep the subjects in the frame.
Sure.
And he's rolling the camera like crazy. He would get it so it almost went upside down. And I'm like, John, take it easy.
But if you watch that movie, it's like the chaos of all of that, what
Yeah.
you were dealing with, it totally adds to it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
For sure.
Wolfgang Peterson, right?
Yeah.
You did a couple movies with him?
Yeah, I did 3 movies with Wolfgang.
What, Air Force One, Perfect Storm?
And Poseidon.
Poseidon. Oh, it was Poseidon. I think I may have been by that set, too. You guys had a whole set that turned 180 or something? Or?
Oh, gosh. Did we? Yeah, we did. That's right.
Yeah.
In the lower,
I think it might have been
galley.
open at lunch, and we went in. That's all we would do at Warner Brothers. We walk by and see what cool things we're doing.
Great.
But that's amazing. So you got to work on some like massive movies with him.
Yeah. Yeah, and Wolfgang Peterson was just a treat. He would talk about collaborating with the director or giving ideas. He was always open to ideas, and he really appreciated people's input.
That's great.
But he had such a singular vision of what he wanted. He was so sure of what shots he needed and what shots he didn't need that you'd make suggestions, but often he would say, "No, Danny, I don't need that shot. I know I need this shot and this shot, but I don't think I need that shot."
So he's basically is cutting in his head. Then.
Absolutely.
Yeah, those are the best kind of
Yeah.
directors. That's fantastic. And I don't know about you, but I mean, I've been with those directors who do that, and they're not good at it, and you can see the traps, but you just have to let it go. But
Yeah.
when you're with someone like that, David Nutter was a director like that who just would, I'd do a Steadicam shot and I'd get 40%. Oh, I have to go again. He'd go, no, he's got exactly what I want. And I'd be like, no, I got to, and then you see the cut and you'd be like, I totally,
Thank God.
I know what you're doing.
Right.
Exactly. And you just have to trust him. But when you're doing something like going back to Perfect Storm, it sounds like dump tank and engines and this and that and the other. You're doing a shot and then it's a 2.5 hour reset. You do what, 3 shots a day or something?
Yeah,
like that?
it's amazing how slowly that machine moved.
Is that a tougher show to do than My So-Called Life, where you're literally doing 12 hours of work?
I don't think so.
Yeah.
It's just so much fun, even though it's plodding along at a very slow pace. It was just so much fun to be a part of.
But something like that, when you're on, I've never worked on a big effects movie like that. Worked on digital stuff, but practical, I guess is the word.
Mm-hmm.
Is it, you got it, you figure out the next shot, and then you probably go walk around the lot and get some exercise for an hour and a half and be back.
Or you figure out what that next shot will be, and that'll be the next shot in the morning. First shot in the morning.
First shot in the morning. Yeah.
While we give 6 hours for effects to re-rig everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, we did a lot of sightseeing on the lot.
Sure.
Buy stuff at the company store.
Do you enjoy one versus the other? Did you enjoy like the big effects things versus the the story?
They're so different.
Yeah.
They're somewhat fun. They're each fun in their own way. It's nice working with the kids, in a thing like My So-Called Life, but it's also cool to be in the biggest stage on the Warner Brother lot, And
Sure. And by the way, the movie that everyone on the lot was talking about,
Right.
I remember that very specifically. And that's I think why we were so psyched when Clooney came by. He's like, "You want to see Stage 16?" I'm like, "Are you kidding me?" But do you ever, because you've worked on these massive movies and small movies, do you ever work on? Can you usually tell if they're going to be good?
No. I had no idea that The Hangover was going to be a funny movie. There were funny moments.
But it just overall, it seems like this isn't going to...
Yeah, it was fine, but
Yeah.
it didn't blow us away, or at least didn't blow me away.
Yeah.
No, I can't tell. You could kind of tell that Perfect Storm was going to be a big blockbuster.
Of course.
But when you're in the middle of it, when I'm in the middle of it, it's hard to tell.
It's hard to
sometimes.
tell. Yeah. And also there's that thing of like, who knows what they're going to do in post and, and you name it.
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. What about, have you been on shows, and you don't have to say which, where the director and the DP don't get along and you're caught in the middle?
Yeah.
What do you do?
You have to play the peacemaker and the communicator, because they have to be able to talk to each other.
But what about when they have different visions, actually, and they're each telling you to do, I want this, I want that?
It's hard when you get a director and a director of photography that just have different ideas of what to do, and also that sometimes don't like each other personally.
That's usually the worst one. When they just see something differently, at least you can get people together and go, guys, we got to come up with something.
Right.
But when they don't like each other, which does not often, but it happens. People
Yeah,
are people.
and it happened. I mean, it happened to me a couple of times, to the point on one movie where they weren't even talking to each other.
Oh, jeez. I've been on that once, and it was terrible.
Yeah.
I was on that once where they would be on either side of me, and one of them would say, can you let the DP know? And I'd be like, of course you can't say that, but
it's like an uncomfortable divorce or something.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, what can you do? As a camera operator, you need to try to mediate and try to get some sort of a communication going. I think that AD needs to help you too. The first AD needs to help you.
That's actually a really good point, because I've done in that situation. I said, "What are we going to do?"
Right.
Because that's a great point. I hadn't thought of actually bringing up. Yeah.
And in one particular instance, on a big show, and director and DP that I'd worked with, both on other things, the communication broke down and got really uncomfortable, and I know it cost me any further employment with the director of photography,
because they felt that you didn't choose the right side.
Yeah, and all I was doing was trying to open some sort of communication, and the fact that I was communicating with the enemy.
I mean, the reality of that to me is that might not be a DP you really want to work. I mean, you never want to turn down work, but if that's the type of person there, that's too bad.
But in every other instance, every other working condition, this was a wonderful person to work for, and I still to this day I think back about like what could I have done differently.
And that's the game. Like you never give up on that, right?
Yeah.
You're like, maybe I should have, or what would my career be like?
Yeah, exactly.
I have to ask you about one other show, The Salton Sea.
Oh, gosh.
Because DJ Caruso, I actually knew him back then when that came out, and I remember, I don't know if I went to the premiere or whatever, but I saw it early on. The movie went nowhere.
Right.
It was a phenomenal movie.
Yeah, I should watch it again.
And he was so talented. They're those great, because it's about speed, basically, right? Or the guy's a speed abuser.
Yeah.
And they're those great sort of like stylistic, like 1950s of like the housewives like vacuuming and stuff like that. It's just a crazy movie.
Right.
And Vincent D'Onofrio's like out of his mind.
He's so scary.
He's so scary in that movie.
He was scary on the set.
Well, I was going to ask you about that.
Yeah. I didn't know. I had never worked with him. I'd never seen him, I don't think.
I mean, he's massived method from what I understand, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's just he is that person.
Yeah.
And he's scarier in that movie than most things
Yeah.
are. But was that a good movie to work on? You were with Chris Harhoff on that, right?
I think that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was because I really enjoyed working with the director. I thought he had great
TJ's really
visual
smart.
ideas, so that was exciting. Val
Kilmer
was in an interesting space. So between him and Vincent D'Onofrio, it was a little intimidating for me.
That's one of those movies that I have to wonder, though, while you're working on it, you must be thinking, there's no way this is going to be a good movie. I mean, just from watching it, it's crazy.
Yeah, I think that's right.
But it does work. You should watch it again, because there's some great work in it. Chris Harhoff actually did a breakdown that I haven't put up yet. I have to. Of this low-mode Steadicam shot that he did. It's like a party where people are all passed out, and he's literally walking over bodies.
Right.
And then at the very end, he comes up to a close-up of Val Kilmer and like Val, there's like a beer rolling. But it's a beautiful shot. And it's actually, that's right, we talked about it. He and I talked about it. It was speed ramping during the shot, back when you actually had that cable and you had to do it in camera. And whatever. So really, there's some really neat stuff in that movie, though. More people should see that movie. Go see Salton Sea if you haven't seen it.
Yeah.
Well, great. Well, listen, this has been fantastic. I mean, I could talk to you for hours about this, but
I've enjoyed it.
People want to turn off their podcast. I'll leave you with so thank you, and I'll leave you with the question that I leave everybody with. Someone getting into the business now, someone trying to move up to operating, Dan Gold now talking to Dan Gold 20 years ago or 30 years ago. Or what advice do you have on how to succeed in this business?
Yeah, I think trying to make yourself indispensable as you work, not in an obnoxious way, but have positive things to say, good suggestions, and try to make yourself part of the team. Help these people make their movie with positive ideas and suggestions. And just personally for yourself, believe in yourself. Don't listen to people that tell you you can't do this or you can't do that, or you need to do this for another 10 years before you do that. If you're ready to move on or try something different or reach out in some way, go for it. Don't be the person that's holding you back. Somebody else will do that for you, probably. So just go for it.
I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. We'll be back soon with another great episode. Don't forget to check us out on theop.io for all sorts of information on operating and storytelling. So thanks for listening and have a great day.